You're listening to Eyes on the Ground. I'm Slade Ham, comedian, writer, explorer. I'll be your host. I've noticed that sometimes our ambition can outdistance our ability to realize it. Simply put, we can't do what we want to do. Now, that doesn't always mean we're incapable. Sometimes it just means we don't know how to. And that distinction is a big one because methodology can be fixed more easily than, say, the lack of a skill set can. My guest on this episode is Christopher Titus. You might recognize him from television, where he co-starred in ABC's Big Shots and helmed the eponymous Fox sitcom Titus. I toured with him a decade ago and was fortunate to observe his process along the way. He just wrapped production on his 8th stand-up comedy special, Chasing Monsters. And I feel like I need to pause and acknowledge that number because each one consists of 90 minutes of original stand-up material. We covered a lot of ground, from confidence and ego to storytelling to, most importantly, how to get the things in our heads out. This is my conversation with Christopher Titus. It's good to see you, man, even if it's just on the computer.
Oh, you too, my friend. But I keep seeing you pictured. You're traveling all over the world. You're doing Anthony Bourdain, without the suicidal thoughts, which is awesome.
Oh, give me 20 years.
I know. It's coming. I didn't say it wasn't coming. I just said you're in a good window.
You are hands down, if not one of the most prolific working comics today. But before all of that, when I met you, you had one special. You had one single special, and you had a TV show that is not in syndication.
Hey, can you? What am I calling my dad? You want to just list my failures?
I'm replacing Anthony Bourdain, who died. I'm replacing your dad, who died. This
good. Yeah, man. It's so funny because I wrote Norman Rockwell's Bleeding, and I did it on the road for a while. And we put it up. I took my last $8,500 and I put it up at a theater in LA because I was getting to that point where I was going to quit comedy. You know, you work so hard at this job, and then if it doesn't go anywhere, there's a lot of frustration in it. So I took my last bit of money. I invested in a 99-seat theater, and I put it up in the theater. And this was like 96, 97, and Fox showed up. It was a night that was like, it was a 99-seat theater, 16 people showed up. And 4 of those people were from Fox. And I got the TV show out of it, and I hadn't filmed the special. Norman Rockwell never got filmed. So we went through the whole run of the show from we started filming in 99. The show debuted in 2000. It lasted until 2002. So we did 3 seasons. And then we did the special in 2004. I don't guess
I realized that. I thought, for some reason, I felt like the special came out before. Was it weird doing it that way?
Yes.
In that,
but I had to clear it. I had to clear it to write Fifth Annual of the World Tour. So, and it was just something that I'm on this big thing. I like to lock down the archives. I like to lock it down and get it filmed, and then I like to move on to the next one.
That's a big theme that I've been dealing with in myself, and it's one of the things I want to talk to in depth. When it comes to making stuff, we either get attached to the professionality of, all right, well, I just make things, that's what I do, or we get attached to the reward that comes along with them, the views, the watches, the money, the accolades, all of that. And one of the things I'm like absolutely obsessed with right now is how we get ourselves through those phases, where you're making stuff, but it doesn't do anything. Like I've been doing these travelogues, this series of travel videos, and dude, they go up on my YouTube. I'm making them for the sake of, I need to learn to edit. I need some skill sets that I don't possess. This is an educational thing. But when you post a video that you went around the world to shoot and you spent X amount of hours on, you're like, oh, it got 123 views. It's just demoralizing if that's your metric, I guess.
Yeah, you and I are the open micers of YouTube, really. we're doing bringer shows. Mom, can you watch the video? Please watch the video.
One of the things I adore about you is you don't care what the end result is. You care about making a product and getting it out of your head. Is what it appears to be.
Well, I care about the end result in the sense of the quality of it. But at one point, man, look, we live in a world where entertainment, every fucking kid has a YouTube channel. I mean, when you see some kid playing video games and he's got 30 million subscribers, I don't even my brain doesn't even go into that room. Like I never go, oh my God, man, PewDiePie's kicking ass. I better start playing, Halo. I just like, something, I have a problem. Something gets in my head. There's a script I want to write now called Drawdown, which is about 2 guys coming back from Iraq, best friends. They come back and their lives just split and it goes crazy. So, but my biggest problem, so that's burning in my head now and it's percolating. And though I have this thing where an idea will hit a boil point and then either I grow a tumor or I start writing. That's how it works. So whether it's in these specials, there's these, so I'm on my 9th now.
How do you have another special ready already?
After Armageddon, which we released a while ago, we filmed that in June of almost June a year ago. And I don't know, man. It's weird. Carlin, here's what happened. About, I don't know, after I got divorced and I lost my TV show, my entire life came apart and I realized the only thing I have is stand-up comedy. The only thing I'm good at is either writing jokes, writing stories, or getting on stage. So, and Carlin said, someone had played something that Carlin had said. Carlin said something like, you fucking, quote, you fucking comics think you're good, but he goes, I'm on my 14th special. You don't have one. And you've been doing it 18 years. And I was like, and it was something that hit me. And it wasn't directed at me, but it hit me hard. It was, you ever hear when you hear a pure truth?
Oh, yes. Yes.
And I was like, oh shit, he's right. So I told Rachel, our good friend and my wife, I said, I'm going to do a special every year and a half like Carlin until I die. And she goes, you're crazy. And I said, yeah, but I'll never be Carlin. But
how many do you have? What, 17?
I'm like Costco Carlin. I don't have to I'm the Kirkland brand Carlin.
You're that can of peas that you only get when nothing else is available and it's a pandemic.
So I started writing, and once they're done, it's weird. Look, man, you and I both know we've done this long enough. When you get a bit done, you can tell the bit's done. Mm-hmm. You've rewritten it 6 times. You've mined it as far as you can mine it. And once that happens to a 90-minute piece, I go, let's film it, archive it, and move on. Which is
a great feeling to not have to sit around. One of the things we do all the time, and I know I do it. I will get to what I think is about the end of a thing. Yeah. And then I will play around in that last 5% forever. I will spend a year. Oh, no, I did it with the book, dude. I edited and tweaked and rewrote, because the minute you finish, it's out there. It's done. Sure. I can't take it back, and then I got to move on to the next thing. And what if there's not a next thing? And there's always a next thing. Here's the thing with the frustrating part of that is so I'll do that. I'll get a show done. I'll get it done. We'll film it. We'll edit it. And then, because I still have to write the new stuff. So I'll do the old show for a little while till the special comes out. And I always come up with 10 better jokes. Always. After I've filmed it. Always. Because I think your brain goes, oh, we're free now. I don't have to worry about this working or not. And then my brain says, hey, say this. And then it's fucking better than the jokes I put in the damn special. Storytelling fascinates me on many levels. Psychologically, sociologically, or for the purposes of this podcast and my career, artistically. But even within art, storytelling bleeds across disciplines. It's all just storytelling for the singer-songwriter or the stand-up comedian or the novelist. For the girl who paints murals or for the guy who bakes wedding cakes. Before Chris and I get in depth, I want to take a moment to isolate a particular piece of the conversation where he quotes Dana Carvey.
Dana Carvey said something years ago. When I started, I was really lucky. I was in the Bay Area of Northern California, and Dana Carvey, at that time, he had just done a sitcom with Mickey Rooney and stuff. He wasn't Dana Carvey yet. He was just as talented as he always was, but he hadn't got Saturday Night Live. So I got to work this club called Rooster Teeth Feathers, and I got to open for him a bunch of times when I was like 19 and 20. And Dana Carvey said to me because I have never seen a storyteller like Carvey. And because he puts goofy, like he's not just telling you a story Cosby style. It's the goofiest shit, but it's still one story.
Right.
And I said, how do you do that? And he said, and how do you keep it? Because I could watch him every night. Some guys, I could watch Dana Carvey 7 shows in a row. And although he did the same words, the show was different every time. It was bizarre. And he told me the greatest phrase I've ever learned in comedy. He said, good comics know how to tell the same story again for the first time.
If you're wondering if the storytelling applies to you, it does. So while I'm focused on the artistic side, think about all the different ways storytelling shows up in your life. From dinner parties where you're expected to be entertaining, to the pitch decks you write when you're trying to sell a business. It's everywhere. All right, now let's get back to it. Storytelling is one of the hardest things to do well. Not just in stand-up, regular people, if you've ever been trapped in one of those.
You usually know 4 sentences in. Everyone in the world has 2 good sentences to a story. And then 3 and 4, you're like, oh, this is not going to go anywhere. You know, very, very quickly. Yes. And that's because we write story, but the art of storytelling specifically for the stage. The couple of things I notice, and I'm curious what else you see. One of them, not consolidating people in a story tends to be, and I say that because some people will tell a story exactly how it happened. We were there, I was there, Amy was there, David was there, and John was there. And then they give Amy, David, and John all the lines that Amy, David, and John said. And you go, well, there's no difference between these three. Why are you complicating this with all these players? Right, exactly. Unless you actually take, so when it comes to writing, you know, everybody has a character in your life. And everyone's like, my dad was a certain way. That's why he's become this weird, iconic archetype in my act. And people know, like, I could just say my dad, and people are like, oh shit, here we go. But it took me, 15 years to build that, 20 years to build that. You can do what you just said if every single character has a character trait that makes a difference in the story. If you're just going to say Bob said this and Carol said this, you're exactly right. Why? Just make it you. Yeah, make it you. It happened to you. We all get that. This is fake. We're drinking. Just tell the fucking story. And what you just said right there is important. Which is more important to you, the truth or the story? How much of your act? Oh man, it's weird. It's they're both super important. Here's the thing that audiences. Here's what audiences know. So as a single person in audiences don't know. And by the way, I hate to expound on comedy because I'm not a professor or some shit. This is just what I've learned over. But it's and that's what I'm interested in. Is I don't care if you graduated. I want your street knowledge. I'm asking you how to pickpocket. 36 years. So the audience. So singularly, people don't know if you're telling the truth or not. You're just telling a story. But there's something about that collective conscience when they're all focused on you that that collective conscience will tell you if you're lying or not because they're not laughing as hard. Yep. When you're killing, it's because they believe you and they know you're telling the truth. Don't you find when you tell an honest story the way it happened that the reaction is so much bigger? So yes, and I'll say this in 2 different ways. One, I know that all the little micro expressions and body language and the timbre of your voice, the things we do when we're lying, and no one is actively sitting in the crowd going, well, he failed on 3 different, items on the lie detector test. You just naturally know, right? You just, that dude's full of shit. But then there's the other side to it where, and I don't lie a lot on stage. I tend to, my mind stays very rooted in the truth. I have problems venturing. It's also, you can't fuck it up if you're telling what happened. Well, that's a big part of it. Then with the occasional times where we'll just do a flagrant lie or like crazy hyperbole or something. Those end up being weird for a minute until I've told them enough that I've convinced myself it's the truth, and then they become real again. So yes. I'm fascinated by, and I say the other side of that coin. There are guys out there, and you may not know him. There's a storyteller out of Austin named. Right. He's one of the best storytelling comics I've ever met. These epic 10-minute stories, right. And none of them are even close to true. He sits down and writes the funniest story he can come up with, and then tells it like an anecdote. And he lives a wild enough life that they're not out of the realm of belief. But I couldn't do that at all. I have to know what happened. I'm not. That's a genius. I'm not that creative. Shit has to happen. My jokes about it. Now, when something horrible happens in my life, I'm stoked. Like, it's weird. Like some horrible tragedy happened. I'm like, well, that's another show. Well, when you sit down, like a show like Carrying Monsters or any one of the others, how much of it, like the process of that show, how much of it do you sit down and you go, all right, man, I want to talk about these 5 incidents in this hour and a half? Or do you go, all right, I got a bit and we'll see what else shows up and what else adds to it? Like, what's the before you start writing the punchlines? Okay. So, all right, I know what you mean. So I can't even start on a show until I have the opening and the ending. So when my kids came back in my life, when, we went through the bullshit with their lying and stuff, and when they came back to life, and they had been gone for 2 years. And then we had this weird dinner at Cheesecake Factory, and it turned everything around. And I got this real insight into who I was. And I thought, oh shit, that's the ending of the next show. And so I knew that story was that ending. Some crazy shit happened at the dinner. And then the opening was this show tracks from my child. I used to go to bars. The first time I went to a bar with my first memory in life, Slade, is I got picked up by the cops at 4 years old because I was in a bar with my mom. My mom would go hang out with my uncles out behind the bar, and I was in the bar. And the joke I do on stage is that no one cared that I was 4 in a bar because my mom was super hot. And one night there was a band in the corner, and as the joke I do is, she was like, so here's the thing. Every time you can tell a story, you have to tell the story. The story's the story. Our job, and everybody has them. Everybody has stories. We all have anecdotes. Some of them take 3 minutes to set up, and there's one punchline. And then we found out Grandma had gone into the opioids, and she didn't know, right? There's always a punchline. Right. Our job is to make that journey funny. That's our entire job. It's like, here's my normal story. Now every line has to be funny. So what I do is I write the stories out first, factually. Here's A, B, C, D. I call it just the facts part, the dragnet part of it. Which is a show from the early 40s that no one remembers. And I write all the facts out, and then I go back and I write a punchline for every fact. And the punchlines do not have to track this with the story. The punchlines can be a comment on the fact. Right. So I tell this story about and it's my first memory in life. I went to a bar with my mom, and there was a band in the corner. It was a guy. So he gets a band in the corner. And that's the fact. Now I have to write a joke for that. The joke I wrote was, it wasn't a band. It was a guy with a snare drum, a guy with electric guitar, a guy with a tambourine, and a guy with a tambourine. The tambourine battles were fierce. So so then the story goes on. Well, I walked out the bar after 20 minutes. I walked out of the bar and I got picked up by LAPD. And this is my first memory in life. So that's where the show starts, and it starts and it sees where I go. It's all about tragedy, and which is great. We're doing it now because the tragedy we're all living through right now. It's perfect time for this show. Do you have big parts of your life that you haven't touched yet? Like, I know your dad's funeral, that was in 5th annual End of the World. You do almost 13. How long is that bit? Your dad's casino funeral bit. That bit's about 13 minutes, 13, maybe 18 minutes. When you do long stories, not just you, I mean us in general, one of the things, I have several that probably float in the 7 to 10 range. Right. But once you get past that, how do you keep someone in a story for 15 minutes, which sounds, to some people that are listening, that sounds impossible, because when I see people do it poorly, you see them do a little chunk of it and a lot of, and then you start to hear that and you just go, oh my God, there's more. Oh my God, there's more. Yeah, exactly. Not yay, there's more. More. Well, the Bruce Who, the Springsteen bit off of Voice in My Head is 29 minutes. Good God. Yeah. Well, Cosby, here's why. There's a couple bits. One called My Brother Russell, Whom I Slept With, and the other one is called 200 Miles Per Hour. And I grew up on Cosby. I have every album. I studied Cosby. Yep. You can hear Cosby cadences in my stories. 100%. My father. What? So I in those bits, I think one of them's 22 minutes and one of them's 18 minutes. So very young, I realized, you can tell a story. And maybe that's how I got the writing style, because Cosby will run you through. So, and let's just go over Cosby storytelling in My Brother Russell. My Brother Russell, he talks about, he has two brothers. That's how it starts. Two brothers sleeping together in what used to be a crib. And he's just like, I'm like, oh shit. And Chicken Heart too. But so anyways, that bit goes on. He talks about being in the room with his brother first. That goes on for like 4 or 5 minutes. And then he starts doing the characters of his brother. Then they start screwing around, and the bit builds. The bit has like 4 chapters to it. It builds to his dad comes in the room. His dad breaks. Then he describes his dad. But he goes off on this tangent about his father. Then he comes back to the scene with his father in it. So now we're 8 minutes in, and we're literally on the first chapter of the story. Then dad gives him a lecture. He leaves. They start screwing around again. And it's all these subsections. So when you're writing a story, you're not writing one story. You're writing about everything that happened in the story. I take this bit about this. What am I doing on the new show? I tell a bit about being kidnapped. My dad got kidnapped by my dad when I was from my grandparents. So I tell the story of my dad on the plane. Talking. My dad literally told he was drinking and he's flying to Detroit to come steal me because he found out where I was. I tell how my dad found out where I was. Then I tell the story about him on the plane. He tells the guy he's telling, who he doesn't know, on the seat next to him on the plane is the Detroit Metro District Attorney. And he doesn't know that until he goes, "I'm sorry, I've been talking the whole time. What do you got?" Yeah. But thank God that guy had a wife who's getting divorced and she was messing with his kids. So instead of basically arresting my father when they landed in Detroit, the man gave my dad a seminar on how to legally kidnap a child. So I tell the plane story. We land, then I tell how he went and got me. Then I tell the trip back. I think the only sin is to not be funny. And you can take any fact and jump on the punchline. The punchline just has to relate to the fact. It doesn't have to relate to the story, because then the next line goes back to the story.
Do you compartmentalize those things in your head as different bits, or is it all one big bit?
It's funny. I don't think about that far anymore. What I used to do, I never thought of them as different bits. You just can't be afraid when you're telling a story to leave the story. Because as long as you're funny and compelling, in fact, I would even say that as long as you're compelling, we always want to be funny, but so many guys are so worried about taking a moment of silence. And I like to build to it. I like funny, and then just wham, and then back to funny.
The silence is a good litmus test for me, especially if I build it in, 2/3 of the way into the show or a third, these little weird places where I just want to see where they're at, and I can get through. You'll design a sentence specific. Let me make sure I can hear the air conditioner like I should. Over the next portion of this interview, you'll hear Chris and I talk a lot about ego and honesty, both of which I find integral to stand-up comedy, but potentially dangerous as well. You'll also hear the name Ray come up. That's Rachel Bradley, Chris's wife, my friend, and fellow stand-up comedian.
Working with me, Ray's picked up a lot of stuff, good and bad, from me. She's working on her second special now. We just filmed Alpha Chick. She started working it, and one night she got pissed at the audience. We were in Chicago. And here's the thing about honesty, which is awesome. She was like, "I don't like this fucking crowd." She hadn't been on stage yet. She was actually, it was Friday or Saturday second show, and she
walked through the room.
Yeah, long enough. You're like, "Oh, these people are gonna. Yeah, I hate these people
already.
They're ordering drinks, and I hate them." That's how good of a comic she became. So she goes, "I'm gonna do this bit about my mom," which she hadn't written, and I was like, I had like a reaction, like, "No,
yeah, you don't work like that."
She's way smarter than I am, as you know how smart Ray is. So she gets on stage. She had some ideas. She got and did this bit about her mom, burying her mom and spreading her mom's ashes. And I'm getting chills right now. And I'm standing in the back because I wanted to. I'm a comic, so I love her to death, and I want her to succeed. But I'm also a comic, and I'm waiting for the car wreck.
Yes.
I can't wait.
Yeah. We'll tell that story next.
And she gets on stage and does this bit about her burying her mom. Spreading the ashes on the beach, and the audience went batshit. And I was like, she gets on stage, and I got done with my set, and I was like, "That's amazing." We took it to Austin. And we went into Austin. We booked this theater in Austin. It's just kind of this black box theater where everybody's like right on you. Like it's risers, and you're Slade. You're standing. You know this.
Yeah.
You're 8 feet from the front row here. You're 8 feet here and 8 feet here, and everybody's on you. And I went to her and I go, "Hey, you know that story you told in Chicago?" I go, "This is the crowd." I go, "Don't lie to these people." I go, "If you lie," I go, "they're going to see every twitch, and they're going to see you lie."
You can lie to a theater. You can't.
Yes, you can't. You cannot lie when they're, And I said, and she got on stage, and I said, she goes, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "I haven't written." And I go, "What? Don't bitch now. You already did it in Chicago." And she got on, dude, it's the weirdest thing. So she's opening, dead cold audience, does 20 minutes, this one story, gets a standing O. And it was all came down to her. She was dead honest with them. She had the jokes, but she was dead honest with them and wasn't afraid of the silence. She wasn't afraid of scaring them with her mom dying. She wasn't afraid of talking about cancer. And it's weird because so many comics are afraid to talk about stuff. Like, I don't know, they're not going to like that. If they think you're upset by it, like, you're over.
They know, and they appreciate more right after somewhere around. God, when was this? somewhere in the process of me working out the relationship stuff I was doing about, about the abusive relationship. And when I started being real honest about that, when you go in depth about being pushed off a balcony or stabbed or some of the things that went on, like I was doing a show in DC I remember this big bowed up black cop came up to me after the show, and we had a 20-minute conversation. He's like, man, I thought I was just like the only dude. And we did these conversations that would come out from people after the show. And I'm like, they're waiting to hear something they haven't heard before. Nobody wants to hear another Bumble or Tinder joke. No one wants to hear another airplane joke. So when those happen on stage, you can almost feel the crowd go,
yeah.
And then you can see them light up when you go into something that you haven't, that's never really been broached on stage before.
When they see a bunch of guys doing the same, I went to the genius part after. Are these guys geniuses? When you're doing the same shit that they've seen, that you can see them kind of just go, okay, we're in a comedy club. They're doing comedy now. And then you get up and you tell this story about being abused, or I tell a story about, getting kidnapped or losing my kids. I call that the bonus. So people get off stage and they funny first. Our job is funny first, always funny first. But when you're honest about it, I think at the end they come and they go, and they don't come up and say, the biggest compliment is not you're funny. The biggest compliment is, dude, my ex-wife is such a psychopath. Let me tell you what she did with my kid.
That's how you know.
It's almost like they didn't hear the jokes. They just heard your story. And I've had people with this news show specifically write me, and this happens all the time, but they write me these emails. They're like, dude, I want you to know that I get shit like, I didn't kill myself because of Love is Evil. And that's a bonus. Funny first, but I think the honesty in it makes all the difference. Hicks was incredibly honest. The guys I love are really honest.
You have survived your own ego in this business. Like, is that why Titus got canceled? Was it you, or was that
Titus got canceled because I don't know, man. The story over there, we had 3 presidents in 3 years. The 3rd president came in and just wanted to change everything. And we were already on our 3rd season. And she just came in, she goes, here's what I want you to do. And she had changed Dharma and Greg. They had made Dharma and Greg cheat on each other. But I'm a writer, and so I know how characters and how audiences work. You and I have a different... Comedians, it's so funny because people think comedy is easy, but we have to get in front of a room full of strangers and make them love us.
Nothing is more abnormal socially than a stranger standing in front of 300 strangers, and collectively we all agree that this is the dynamic we're going to operate under for the next hour. That's nuts. It doesn't pick. If you just started talking in a grocery store, they'd call the cops.
Yeah, exactly. So she came into a meeting, and every president, what I learned with executives, they just want to pee on it. They want to put their scent on it. She changed the show. She said, I want you guys to cheat on each other, which we already did in episode 4. Mm-hmm. And the problem, here's my big problem. And here's where my diplomacy, I needed another 20 years of getting bitch slapped by my own self, basically, to get the wisdom to shut the fuck up. Because that's it, honestly, if somebody just told me in my life, just shut the fuck up. That's it. That's the best. Don't be a dick and shut the fuck up. That's the best piece of advice you can get.
But you have the same problem I do, is that you can be cognizant of that, Chris. I could be sitting in a room with that running like a subroutine, like a ticker in front of my eyes, and I'm going, I see it. Okay, I gotta say something.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, what? You want me to do what?
I walk right around the red tape. It's
caution tape is not in the way. So she wanted to, and we'd already written an episode where we cheated on each other. We did a 2-episode arc where we cheated on each other in the first season. And I just looked at her and I said, I've told this story many times. I said, do you even watch the show? Because let me explain to you how the show works. And then I explained it to her like she was a 3-year-old. And now, here's my biggest mistake in that. I could have waited and actually gone and had a meeting with the president one-on-one the next day. I could have called her and said, hey, we heard your ideas. Can I come talk to you about them? And then I could have very calmly, as a writer, laid out why it won't work. But instead, in front of 30 people at this giant table in Rupert Murdoch's conference room, I just told her how the show worked like she was a 3-year-old. And whether I was right or not doesn't matter. She canceled the show. We actually got moved. It took them a while to cancel the show because it was doing too well. So they moved us, and we were still doing pretty well. And they dude, here's how bad I pissed them off. I think I've told you this story. They had to tell me by midnight on a certain day about they were going to pick it up or not, so I could make it to the upfronts and do those interviews. Mm-hmm. They waited till 11:53. They called me at my cabin like 7 minutes from the deadline. Sorry, done. Which means I pissed her off so bad she made somebody wait up. No. You call him at 11:53.
Poor assistant with an alarm set.
I mean, you know me. I mean, people that say I'm arrogant and stuff. Okay. I mean, you know me. I'm a pretty intense dude. I'm a pretty intense dude at times. I actually I will kill for the people I love, and I will kill the people that are going to hurt them. You know, so I get it. But arrogance, I don't know, man. I started at 19. I have nothing else. You know, I'm on my 9th special. I mean, I don't know if it's
you've earned a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I get it though. I get it. I mean, I do know what I know, and I'm not shy about talking about it. I'm a lot more humble now.
Every comic says, all right, well, yesterday I did a bunch of writing. What is writing? Do you sit down at what is your process? Because for me, I'm a series of scattered notebooks and Evernote and a bunch of other chaos. And then I grab all of that a couple of times a week and dump it all on a table and then organize it. And then I go, oh, cool, here's the 9 things I'm kind of playing with. And I just let them loop in my brain. And then I go on stage with whatever that is.
See, that works, man. If you put it, so many people don't think that. I always tell anybody, I said, just put it up there. I go, tell your brain to solve that. I go, here's the joke. I need to tell your brain to solve it. And your subconscious will start working. If you give yourself permission to, Okay, so here's how I write. I give myself, number 1, permission to not be funny. We all sit down and we all force ourselves to be funny. And if we can't, we give up after 10 minutes. But Leno said years ago, and I heard this through Kevin Rooney, Leno said that, your brain has 2 halves, right? Left and right. And one side's creative, and we live in a linear world. We live in a bills. I got to get here on time. I got to do my job. I got to deal with my bank. I got to call the mortgage guy. We deal in this weird, straightforward fucking ABC world. Creativity is A, Z, X, B, parentheses.
Right, yeah, red.
And, yeah. And so for your brain to get out of the real world and switch to creative, it takes about 35 minutes. So I give myself permission to not be funny, and I just write shit. Whatever the story is, I'll just start writing it. And it's not funny, and it's just the facts. And I guarantee you this, anybody who's listening, if you force yourself, because what happens really is that most people sit down for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you're frustrated, I suck today, and you quit. Well, you didn't give your brain a chance to go, okay, we're doing this now. We don't got to take the garbage out. We're just going to do this shit. Okay. When your brain switches to creative, that's why you ever notice in a long car ride, like you'll start fucking popping.
Oh, yes. Shit. Yeah. I'll turn the radio off for that reason.
Right. You'll start because your mind is free. You're doing one stupid, boring task, especially on the gigs we have to drive.
Oh, God, yeah.
And your brain will start going. Well, you have to do that when you write too. You have to sit down and just go far and just let your mind wander and wander, write shit. Give yourself permission to not be funny. So I do that first. And then I just start cranking stuff out. And if I come up with a funny idea, but I don't have the punchline, I write that idea under the joke. I'll write a story at a time. This new script, and the hardest part, as we all know, is to sit down and start. Once I start, I'm in. I've had like 8 hours. I was in my studio one day, and I just had 8 hours disappear, and I thought I was there for an hour and a half. So it's great. Yeah.
Once you hit that vein, what you just mentioned, that sort of, and I want you to get back to this, but the breaking through that first sort of wall that I can't tell you how long I would go, all right, well, I guess I just don't have anything in me. And I'd close the book and I go, well, I was there for 20 minutes. You said 35 minutes, and I don't know if that's a scientific number you've grabbed or if that's what you've found in your own work, but that's a very close to accurate number for when I think a flow starts to happen.
I guarantee it's about that. For me, it's better now. For you, it's better now. You can see, you go, that's a premise, got it, boom, and you can start being funny. But that's because you've been to the gym, man. You went to the mental gym a lot. You wrote enough material.
It's sort of the Bruce Lee, the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, when he goes, when I started martial arts, he goes, a kick was just a kick and a punch was just a punch. And that's kind of how I was like, well, it's just jokes. You just say funny stuff. And then you start to study. And like he said, a kick becomes so much more than a kick, and a punch more than all these mechanics and the things you got to think about and this and that. And then once you get really good at it, it's just a kick and a punch again. And that's sort of where the writing process, I guess, at least with me and probably, you as well, you sort of come full circle where you've automated now all the stuff that used to be technical.
I think you also have to, once we get, because how long are you in now? Because I'm 36 years in.
20 years, it was 20 years on Sunday.
So there's something I've tried to do with every special. I've tried to come up with a new way to structure the show or tell a story. Was it fifth annual or the kid in the DMV it's an Evolution where I start telling one story and I go off and then I come back to it and then I go off and I come back to it and I go off for 10 minutes and I come back to it and I go, and it's one story with all these bits between it. I don't want to become, I hope I don't become although I was looking at this special and it's about my family and my life. So I guess my niche is that I just got to figure out a new way to do what I do in my niche. So yeah, the first thing was writing. So then I write the stories up and I write all the facts down, and it doesn't matter if there's 50. So many comics think, how do you write a long story? You just make every punchline to a fact funny. I mean, the audience doesn't give a shit if you talk about the same thing for 4 hours, as long as the journey is funny. They don't give a shit. And
that's I guess a 10-minute, I think about it with some of my bits, but a 10-minute story is just probably 50 jokes. If you're if you're breaking it down to just set up punch, that's just how I write a story. They just happen to all have to do with the same thing.
Right. And so when you like figure every 10 seconds we're going for a laugh with tags and stuff. So if that happens, it's 60 jokes is 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Ellen said one year, she said, I write a new joke. I put a new joke on stage every night because by the end of the year, I've written 365 jokes.
Wow. Yeah. When you look at it like that, it seems so easy to amass all of this material. It's
still a year of your life though. I mean, it takes me about a year and a half to get something in shape. Then it takes me 2 months of refining and then we film it.
Do you multitask well, or do you, like when you're focused on a special, do you leave space to write and produce a movie or to do these other projects, or do you go, all right, I can only deal with, I used to multitask and I found that now if I don't just set aside, it's got to be one specific thing or I don't get anything done.
Yeah, I can't. Like when we shot Special Unit, there was no room for anything else. The same with this. We have to change the studio. We have to make sure everybody get the PPE. We have to, but I don't know, man. It's not great if you don't focus on it.
That's exactly how I feel. All right, dude, I would talk to you for the next 10 hours about stand-up comedy.
Yeah, we've actually, talking about comedy really just sucks the life out of comedy, but it's so intricate. I love it, man. But thanks for having me on.
I can't reinforce some of the latter parts of this interview anymore. The concept of sitting down and pushing through the uncomfortable moments at the beginning of the creative process is vital. And there's no substitute for it. In fact, just producing this episode, I've caught myself many times standing up and walking to the kitchen, stepping outside, making a phone call, sending text messages, surfing Facebook. All little things that I know are just distracting me from what I'm supposed to be doing. And one of the most effective things you can do is to simply clear your space, turning off televisions, silencing phones, refusing to open your web browser. They're all little steps that will make it easier for you to do the big step, which is to sit down and do the work. Because eventually, if you keep swinging, you will break through. You can follow Christopher Titus on Twitter @TitusNation, or consider subscribing to the Christopher Titus podcast. Eyes on the Ground is produced by me, Slade Ham. Additional production and music provided by Brian Carrion. To support future projects like this, please consider contributing to my Patreon or subscribing to me on all things social media @Slade Ham. SLADEHAM.